Rain drummed against the windows of Heartwood Books as Lila Chen wiped down the counter for the third time that evening. The vintage bookshop had been quiet all day, too quiet for a Saturday, even with the weather. She was about to flip the sign to closed when the door chimed. A man stepped inside, shaking water from his dark hair. He was around 30, wearing a wool coat that had seen better days, and carrying a leather messenger bag that looked older than both of them combined. "I'm so sorry," Lila said. "We're just closing." "Please," he said, and something in his voice made her pause. "I'm looking for a very specific book. I've been searching for months." Lila found herself nodding. "What's the title?" "I don't know the title, but it has a red cover, published sometime in the 1950s, and inside the front cover, there should be an inscription. 'To my darling Thomas, may you find all the adventures you seek.'" The specificity caught Lila's attention. "That's very detailed. Is it a gift?" "It was my grandfather's," the man said. "Thomas Crane. He died last month and left me a letter saying this book was in a shop called Heartwood Books in Seattle, that it was important I find it." "I'm sorry for your loss," Lila said softly. "I'm Lila. Let me help you look." "Daniel," he said, offering a small smile. "Thank you." They searched together, pulling books from shelves, checking inscriptions, laughing when they found funny messages from long-ago gift givers. An hour passed, then 2. The rain continued outside, cocooning them in the warm glow of the shop's amber lights. "Tell me about him," Lila said as they worked. "Your grandfather." Daniel's face softened. "He was a navigator in the merchant marines, traveled the world, told the most incredible stories. But he always said the greatest adventure of his life happened right here in Seattle in the summer of 1952. He never told me what it was." "And you think the book has answers?" "I think my grandfather wanted me to understand something. He was very particular about this. The book is here, in this shop specifically." Finally, on a bottom shelf in the poetry section, Lila's fingers touched a slim red volume. "Daniel." He crossed to her quickly. She pulled out the book, a collection of Pablo Neruda poems published in 1954. She opened the front cover. There, in faded fountain pen ink, "To my darling Thomas, may you find all the adventures you seek. Forever yours, L." Daniel stared at it, his hands trembling slightly as he took the book. "L," he whispered. He mentioned an L in his letter. He said she was the love of his life, but they couldn't be together. He never told anyone why. Lila noticed something else. There's a bookmark. Tucked between the pages was an old photograph. A young man in a naval uniform standing beside a beautiful young woman in front of a shop. This shop. The sign above them read, Heartwood Books. "That's my grandfather," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Lila looked closer at the woman and felt her world tilt. The woman had the same dark hair, the same slight smile, the same distinctive birthmark on her left cheekbone that Lila saw in the mirror every morning. "This is impossible," Lila whispered. "What?" "That woman. She looks exactly like... Do you have your phone? Look up Heartwood Books history." Daniel pulled out his phone and searched. He found an old article. "Historic Seattle Bookshop celebrates 100 years." He scrolled through photos until he found one from 1952. Heartwood Books, established 1925 by the Chen family. Current owner in 1952, Lila Chen. They looked at each other. "My great-grandmother," Lila said slowly. "I was named after her, but I thought, my family told me she never married, that she ran the shop alone her whole life." Daniel turned to the poem the bookmark had been holding. It was Sonnet 16, and beside it, in the margin, was handwritten, "Meet me where stories begin. 10 years. Wait for me." "This doesn't make sense," Lila said. "If they loved each other, why didn't they just—" "Because in 1952, interracial marriage was illegal in Washington state," Daniel said quietly. "My grandfather was white. Your great-grandmother was Chinese American. They couldn't be together. The weight of it settled between them. Two people who loved each other, forced apart by unjust laws." "The inscription says, 'Wait for me,'" Daniel said. 10 years. That would have been 1962. Interracial marriage wasn't legalized here until 1967. So they never— Lila couldn't finish. "No, my grandfather married my grandmother in 1955. But he kept this book his entire life. And now he's brought us together to find it." Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Lila met frequently. They told themselves it was to research their grandparents' story, to understand what had happened. But coffee dates turned into long dinners. Research sessions turned into walks through Pike Place Market. They were falling for each other, and they both knew it. One evening, back in the bookshop, Lila discovered something new. Behind where the red book had been, there was a loose board. Behind it, a small wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with ribbon. Letters between Thomas and the first Lila, spanning from 1952 to 1955. They read them together, tears streaming down their faces. The letters spoke of stolen moments, of meetings in the bookshop after hours, of a love that was real and deep and impossible. The last letter was from Thomas, dated December 1955. "My darling Elle, I cannot ask you to wait any longer. The laws will not change in our lifetime. I'm being deployed again, and when I return, I must do what's expected of me. But know that every adventure I have, every place I see, I will carry you with me. You are the greatest story I ever lived. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I'm leaving our book in your shop where our story began. Perhaps one day someone will find it and understand what we could not say aloud. Yours eternally, T. God," Daniel whispered. They never stopped loving each other. "There's one more letter," Lila said, pulling out an envelope. "It's addressed to you." Daniel opened it with shaking hands. It was dated just weeks before his grandfather died. "Daniel, if you're reading this, you've found the book and you've met her. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in love that echoes through time." Lila Chen, the new one, inherited her great-grandmother's shop, her name, and if my intuition is correct, her spirit. The first Lila died in 2010. I couldn't attend the funeral, but I sent flowers anonymously every year on her birthday for 58 years. My greatest regret is that I let fear and injustice keep me from the woman I loved. Don't make my mistakes. If you found something real with her, fight for it. The world is different now. Be braver than I was. Love her the way I never could. Grandfather Daniel looked at Lila, and she looked back at him, both of them understanding what was happening. "This is crazy," she said. "It is," he agreed. "We barely know each other. We don't. But I think I'm falling in love with you. I know I'm falling in love with you." He kissed her then, in the bookshop where their grandparents had fallen in love 70 years earlier, surrounded by stories of love and loss and hope. 3 months later, Lila and Daniel were inseparable. They'd moved in together, a small apartment above the bookshop. Everything felt right, destined, like they were completing a story that had been left unfinished. Then Lila found the second box. She was renovating the back office when she discovered it hidden in the wall, another wooden box, identical to the first. Inside was a single letter, addressed to no one. If you're reading this, you've found what I left behind. I'm sorry for the deception, but some truths are too painful to speak aloud. Thomas and I loved each other. Yes, but there's something I never told him. Something I couldn't tell him. In the spring of 1953, I discovered I was pregnant with his child. I was terrified. I was alone. I told him I needed space, that the relationship was too dangerous. He left for deployment, thinking I had chosen safety over love. I never corrected him. I had the baby in secret, a daughter. I gave her to my sister to raise, told everyone she was my sister's child. Thomas never knew he had a daughter. My sister moved away, raised the girl as her own. The girl grew up, had children of her own, never knowing the truth. I've carried this secret my entire life. It was wrong, it was cowardly, but I thought I was protecting everyone. The truth is buried with me now. Let it stay buried. Lila Chen, 1992. Lila read it 3 times before the implications hit her. If the first Lila had a daughter, and that daughter had children, then Daniel could be... No, that was impossible. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. Mom, I need to ask you something about great-grandma Lila. Of course, honey. What is it? Did she have any children? I know the family history says she never married. But did she have any children? Silence on the line. Then, why are you asking? Mom, please, it's important. Her mother sighed. Your grandmother, my mother, was actually great-grandma Lila's daughter, biologically. But Lila gave her to her sister to raise. We only found out after Lila died, found some papers. We decided to keep it quiet. It was complicated, Lila. The father was a white sailor. Back then, that was difficult. Lila felt the room spin. Mom, did anyone ever find out who the father was? No. Lila took that secret to her grave. Why? Lila hung up. She pulled up Daniel's family tree, the one they'd looked at weeks ago while researching their grandparents. She traced the lines. Thomas Crane married Sarah Mitchell in 1955. They had a son, Daniel's father. But the dates, she did the math. Thomas's son was born in 1954, not 1956 like she'd thought. And if the first Lila had a daughter born in 1953, Daniel came home to find Lila sitting in the dark, surrounded by papers. What's wrong? He asked immediately. She handed him the letter. He read it slowly, his face going pale. Your grandmother was born in 1953? He asked quietly. Yes. And my father was born in 1954. Yes. They stared at each other. We could be related, Lila whispered. We could be cousins, Daniel confirmed. The room felt too small, the air too thin. We need to take a DNA test, Lila said. We do. They ordered the test that night. Neither of them slept. They didn't touch each other, afraid of what it might mean. The results came back 2 weeks later. 2 weeks of agony, of not knowing whether their love story was actually a family tragedy. Lila opened the email with shaking hands. Daniel stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. She read the results once, twice, 3 times. We're not related, she said, her voice breaking with relief. The DNA match is 0. We're not cousins. We're not family. They collapsed into each other, laughing and crying. But as they held each other, relief flooding through them, Lila's mind caught on something. Wait, she said, pulling back. If we're not related, then who was your grandfather's son's mother? Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Your father was born in 1954. Your grandfather married your grandmother in 1955. That means my father was born before they got married. So what? But Daniel, your grandfather's letter said he was going to do what was expected. He married your grandmother after he left my great-grandmother. What if there was overlap? Daniel's expression changed. You think my grandfather cheated on your great-grandmother? Or your grandmother cheated on whoever she was with? Or, Lila trailed off, thinking. Daniel, do you have any photos of your grandmother from the 1950s? He pulled out his phone, scrolling through family photos his mother had scanned. He found one, a young blonde woman holding a baby, dated 1954. That's my grandmother Sarah holding my father. Lila looked at the photo. Then she looked at the photo of her great-grandmother with Thomas. Daniel, I need to see something. She went to the bookshop storage room and pulled out an old album. Photos from the 1950s that her great-grandmother had kept. She flipped through until she found what she was looking for. A newspaper clipping from 1954. It was a society page announcement. Engagement announced between Thomas Crane and Sarah Mitchell. Below it was a photo, Thomas standing with Sarah. But in the background, blurry but visible, was another person. A woman with dark hair. Lila pulled out a magnifying glass and looked closer. The woman was pregnant, and she was staring directly at Thomas with an expression that could only be described as heartbroken. That's my great-grandmother, Lila whispered. So the timeline makes sense, Daniel said. She got pregnant in 1953, had the baby, gave her away. My grandfather married my grandmother shortly after, had his own son. 2 families, neither knowing about the other's child. But Daniel, if we're not related, that means... They looked at each other, the same terrible realization dawning. One of those children wasn't Thomas's, Lila finished. But which one? That was the question they couldn't answer. If Lila's grandmother wasn't Thomas's daughter, then who was her father? And if Daniel's father wasn't Thomas's son, then whose son was he? They searched through the letters again, looking for clues. In one of the last letters from Thomas to Lila, dated November 1952, there was a strange line. I know you've been spending time with him. I understand. I have no right to be jealous when I can't offer you a future. But please, be careful. Some men make promises they can't keep. Who was him? Daniel asked. Lila found another letter, this one earlier, from August 1952. I need to tell you something. Chen Wei has asked to court me properly. My family approves. I told him no, because my heart belongs to you. But how long can I keep refusing? We have no future, you and I. Maybe I should say yes. Maybe that's the practical choice. Chen Wei, Daniel said. Was that my great-grandmother's cousin, Lila said. He ran a restaurant in Chinatown. He eventually married someone else, had kids. But if he was interested in her, then your grandmother might be Chen Wei's daughter, not Thomas's. Which would mean your father definitely was Thomas's son. You're Thomas's grandson. And you're not Thomas's great-granddaughter. They sat with this, processing. So, our grandparents' love was real, Daniel said slowly. But the baby, your grandmother, wasn't his. Which means the letter your grandfather left you, bringing us together. It wasn't about correcting some cosmic wrong or finishing their story. No, Daniel agreed. It was just about him wanting me to find love, and hoping that I'd find it in the same place he did, even if I couldn't have it with his descendant. They looked at each other. Is it strange that I'm relieved? Lila asked. That we're not related? That this isn't some predetermined thing, that we're choosing this, not fulfilling some destiny. Daniel smiled. I think that's the whole point. Our grandparents couldn't choose. We can. He kissed her, and she kissed him back. But as they held each other, Lila couldn't shake one last nagging thought. She pulled away. Daniel, there's something that doesn't make sense. What? If my great-grandmother's baby was Chen Wei's, why did she hide it? Her family would have approved of that match. It would have been socially acceptable. Why give the baby away? Daniel frowned. That's true. Unless the baby wasn't Chen Wei's either. They stared at each other. Then whose baby was it? Daniel asked. Lila pulled out her phone and called her mother again. Mom, one more question. When you found out about great-grandma's baby, did you do a DNA test? Did you check your ancestry? We did, actually. Your aunt insisted. She wanted to know our full heritage. And it came back as expected. Chinese, European descent, some Pacific Islander way back. Why are you asking all these questions, honey? What percentage European? About 25%, I think. The report said it was consistent with one European grandparent, your grandmother's father. So the baby was half white. That narrowed it down to Thomas, or who? Lila thanked her mother and hung up. She looked at Daniel. Your grandfather definitely had a child with someone in 1953-54. We know your father was born in 1954 to your grandmother Sarah, and we know my grandmother was born in 1953 and she was half white. So both women were pregnant at overlapping times, Daniel said, which means Thomas either fathered both children or neither. There has to be something else, Lila said. Something we're missing. She went back to the hidden box, the one that had held the last letter. She felt around inside it, checking for false bottoms, hidden compartments. Her fingers found something, a small envelope stuck to the inside lid. Inside was a birth certificate for a baby girl born March 15th, 1953. Mother, Lila Chen. Father, unknown, but paperclipped to it was a small note. In handwriting Lila now recognized as her great-grandmother's. His name was James. He was Thomas's best friend, his shipmate. He was kind when Thomas was away. He was there when I was alone. It happened once, just once. I never told Thomas. I never told James. I gave away the baby and I let everyone believe she was my sister's. James died in 1954 in a training accident. He never knew. Thomas never knew. I loved Thomas, but James gave me a child. I have carried all three of them, Thomas, James, and my daughter, as ghosts in my heart my entire life. The room was silent. So your grandmother was James's daughter, Daniel finally said, and your father was Thomas's son. Which means we're not related at all. Our grandparents' best friends are our actual grandparents. They started laughing, slightly hysterically. This is insane, Lila said. Completely insane, Daniel agreed. Do we tell anyone? I don't know. Does it matter? Your grandmother has lived her whole life thinking she was Chen Wei's daughter, or maybe Thomas's. My father has always known he was Thomas's son. Everyone's dead except them. Would knowing the truth help anyone? Lila thought about it. No, I don't think it would, but it helps us. How? Because we know the truth. We know we're not related. We know we can choose this freely, without any cosmic weight or predetermined destiny. We're just two people who met in a bookshop and fell in love. Like any other love story. Exactly like any other love story. Daniel pulled her close. except for the part where our grandparents' tragic romance led us to each other, and their secrets almost tore us apart. And we discovered a hidden family mystery that rewrites both our family histories. Except for that part, Lila agreed, smiling. They kissed, there in the bookshop, where both their stories began. But later that night, as Daniel slept, Lila lay awake, thinking. There was one thing that still bothered her, one detail that didn't fit. Thomas's letter to Daniel had said, "If my intuition is correct, how had Thomas known Daniel would meet someone? How had he been so sure?" She got up and went back to the shop, pulling out Thomas's final letter to Daniel. She read it again by flashlight. "I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in love that echoes through time." And then she noticed something she'd missed before. At the very bottom of the letter, in pencil so light it was almost invisible, was a single line. "She told me everything before she died. I forgave her. I hope you can too." Lila's blood ran cold. Thomas had known. Before he died, the first Lila must have contacted him. She must have told him everything. About James, about the baby, about all of it. And Thomas had sent his grandson to Heartwood Books, knowing full well that Daniel wasn't related to the Chen family. So why? Why bring them together? Lila turned the letter over. On the back, in the same faint pencil, was one more line. P.S. Check the red book again, not the inscription, the last page. With shaking hands, Lila went to the shelf and pulled out the Neruda book. She opened to the last page. There, in handwriting she recognized as Thomas's, dated just months before his death, was a final message. To whoever finds this. The woman I loved made a choice I didn't know about until it was too late. My best friend James loved her too, though neither of us spoke of it. The day before he died, James came to me. He said if anything happened to him, I should watch over Lila. He didn't know why he felt the need to tell me that. Neither did I at the time. Years later, I understood. Some part of him knew he was going to die. Some part of him knew he'd left something precious behind. I promised James I'd protect her, even though I didn't know I was protecting his child. I kept that promise for 70 years. Now I'm passing it to you, Daniel. The love of my life had a daughter by my best friend. You, my grandson, have found that daughter's great-granddaughter. This isn't coincidence. This is James, still looking out for the woman he loved, through me, through you. Honor both our loves, protect her, make the choice we couldn't make. Thomas Crane. Lila sat down hard, the book falling from her hands. It wasn't destiny. It wasn't fate. It was friendship. It was love. It was a promise made by a dying man to his best friend, kept across 70 years, 3 generations, and the boundary between life and death. Thomas had sent Daniel to her because he'd promised James he would protect Lila, all the Lilas, forever. She sat there in the dark bookshop, surrounded by stories, and wondered, how much of love is choice? How much is promise? And how much is the echo of other people's love, resonating through time, pulling us toward each other like gravity, like inevitability, like ghosts guiding us home? She didn't have an answer. But she knew one thing. Tomorrow morning, she would wake up next to Daniel, and she would choose to love him. Every day after that, she would make the same choice. And somewhere, maybe Thomas and James and the first Lila were watching, satisfied that the story they couldn't finish had finally found its ending. Or maybe not. Maybe there was no one watching at all. Maybe some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Maybe some love stories just echo forward forever, getting more complicated with each retelling until no one remembers where the love started or whose heart it belonged to first. Maybe that's what makes them beautiful. 1 year later, Daniel proposed to Lila in the bookshop, in front of the shelf where they'd found the red book. She said yes. At their wedding, they displayed 2 photos, one of Thomas and the first Lila, taken in 1952 in front of Heartwood Books, and one of themselves, taken in the same spot 70 years later. The same bookshop, the same love, different people, or maybe not so different after all. On their wedding night, Lila's mother pulled her aside and handed her a small package. "Your grandmother asked me to give this to you if you ever got married. She said you'd understand what it means." Inside was a letter, written in an old woman's shaky hand. "Dear Lila, if you're reading this, you've found your person. I'm so happy for you. I want you to know something I never told anyone. The man who fathered me, James, was your great-great-grandfather's best friend. But that's not the secret. The secret is this. James survived the 1954 accident. He didn't die. He deserted. He came to my mother one last time, told her he loved her, that he wanted to stay. She sent him away. She told him Thomas needed him to be dead so Thomas could move on with his life, marry, have a family. She sacrificed James's love to protect Thomas's future. James left Seattle and never came back. He died in 1998 in Portland, alone. I know because I found him when I was 40. I visited him once. He told me everything. He said my mother was the bravest person he ever knew. I don't know if that's true. I think she was just scared. But her sacrifice gave me life, gave me you. So, maybe bravery and fear look the same sometimes. I hope you never have to choose between love and sacrifice the way she did. I hope your love gets to be simple and true and uncomplicated. But if it isn't, if it gets messy and hard and impossible, I hope you fight for it anyway. Some loves are worth the complications. All my love, Grandma. Lila read the letter twice, then she folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and slipped it into her wedding dress pocket. She would tell Daniel eventually. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe some mysteries were meant to stay buried. Maybe some love stories should end with questions, not answers. She went back to the reception, took Daniel's hand, and danced with him under the string lights, surrounded by books and friends and family and ghosts of people who loved before them. And she thought, this is enough. This moment, this person, this choice. The rest, the secrets, the mysteries, the questions without answers, could wait. Or not. Some stories don't need endings. They just need to be lived. The end, or is it?